The success of your show is not boiled down to you hitting publish. It's really boiling down to how many times after you hit publish, you unapologetically and aggressively sell that show to people who need it. If you build it, they don't come. If you build it with them, they'll come and they'll bring other people with them.
Some business owners think podcasting is just another marketing tool. But what if it could be the foundation of your brand's growth? Today, I'm talking to George Bryant, an entrepreneur who has scaled multiple businesses to 7, 8, and even 9 figures, and who leverages podcasting as a strategic asset. He is the host of the Mind of George podcast, a New York Times bestselling author, and a highly sought after marketing consultant. I'm Sadaf Bainan, and this is PodJunction podcast. George, welcome to the show.
I'm so honored to be here. I'm stoked. I'm ready to dive in.
Awesome. So let's do that. Let's dive in. George, your podcast is absolutely crushing it. What's the secret sauce?
You know, if I had to answer that in one word, it was 2 words. I'll give it 2 words. Number 1 is, well, now I can go 3, but I'll just build as we go.
Okay.
I'd say the first one and the first answer that in my head is consistency.
Okay.
100% consistency. And the reason I say consistency is not measuring in days or weeks, but like measuring in decades. Like when I started the show, it was not about downloads. It was not about how many people listened and did a like newsflash. I never looked at downloads. I didn't even know how many were getting a week, a month, or I still don't know to this day. I don't even have a login. I don't care.
Love it.
I think that number 1 was this commitment to consistency of like, if I do this, I'm just doing this. And I even said it, I was like, this will go down as one of my proudest ever business legacy achievements. And not because of numbers, just because I'm like, in 15 years, I'm still going to be doing this. So like giving it a chance. The second one, I would say authenticity. The reason I've been able to do the show for 600 episodes is because it feels like me. It's not like the world's version of me or what they want me to be or how they want me to speak. It's very much like I want to feel like you are in my living room and we're having a conversation like we would at the dinner table. And both ways, I invite 2-way conversations. Like I say it on my podcast, like, hey, if you can challenge me, if I can learn something, if you can teach me something, like send me a message. I'd love to hear. It's very much a 2-way dialogue. And so I think the authenticity piece is the part that allows me to grow and allows me to feel comfortable, but also allows me to look forward to it. So if I'm tired one day, I just own that I'm tired. If I have a son who's been homesick and not sleeping and I'm recording earlier, he was coughing in the background. I'm like, hey, welcome to behind the scenes, right? Like we have a coughing kid. So there's this human element that makes it easier to show up and to be myself because I don't have to worry about who I'm being or if I'm on or if I'm off. It's just me kind of all the time. And I think the third one that I would say is a willingness to be curious and grow. My podcast looks very different than it did when I started. I started with no plan, no idea, 3 shows a week, no outlines. I would just have an idea and I would hit record. And then I would go. And then Monday, I'll never forget the structure. Monday was like a 5-minute episode to like set the tone of your week. Wednesday was a little bit deeper of like 20-minute strategies, tactics. And then Friday was a guest interview who was an expert in the thing that I taught. What a logistical nightmare to try to coordinate all of that. And then over time, I dropped the Wednesdays and then we went to Monday and Friday. And now we're still Monday and Friday, but Mondays have evolved into this. It's a solo show for me, whether 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, where I'm just teaching something. And then Fridays stayed guest. But also when I look at it now, I spend a lot of time prepping for a show. I'm the guy who just keynotes off the top of his head. I've been on 10,000 podcasts, like interview me all day. You can tell. If you're like, George, take over the rest of the show. I'm like, Steph, I love you, but like, you can turn off your camera if you want. Like, I'll just run the show, right? I can fill space. I can do it. But now I've been in this season of, you know, my message is only as effective as the recipient's ability to hear it, understand it, and implement it without me. And so I've been putting this pressure on myself and this like kind of level of I can be better. And so now I'm like, outlining shows and like, hey, am I really hitting the intro? Like, does this make sense to them? Are they knowing what they're going to get in the episode? Are they clear? Am I painting the picture that like, this is what they're feeling like? Do I have a clear takeaway? Does it make sense? And so now I even apologize. I'm like, hey, sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. I actually have notes to make sure this is helpful for you. Right. Cause like, my whole career has been like, just stare at the camera lens. But now like I have notes on my iPad and I'm like, I want to do this. And so I'd say if you really, really think about it, it's number one is like making commitment that you're unattached to the results, that you're focused more on significance than success. Because when you focus on significance, whether that's one person or 10 people or 30 people, success follows that, right? But it's baked in for the right reasons. Number two is authenticity, right? There is no other you and there can never be another you. But if your own home doesn't feel comfortable for you to live in it, it's not going to feel comfortable for anybody else to visit it either. And that's where authenticity comes in. And then the third is be willing to be childlike and curious and grow. Just because you started it one way doesn't mean you have to keep it that way. Just because you recorded one way doesn't mean you have to. Just because you did 2 episodes a week doesn't mean you can't do 3 or you can't do 1. You can't change it. And I try to tell people like your podcast is your vehicle. You own it. Now, of course, there could be, consequences or rewards, but ultimately you're driving. And so if you don't want to be on that road anymore, detour. Like take a chance, like take a turn. And I think that that's what I've been willing to do, which is why I think we're coming up on 600 episodes now in 4 years.
Wow. I mean, like you talked about consistency and your almost 600 episodes are proof of that, aren't they? Like, as you said, you gave yourself permission to detour and to pivot, to show up for your audience in the way that worked. And, you also talked about authenticity, and I've been listening to your podcast, and that's something that's really come through. It's really quite obvious actually listening to you, and I absolutely love that. I think in some sense it takes courage to allow yourself to do that when you have so many people listening in and have this lens into your life and what's going on in your space. So I think that's really quite powerful.
Yeah. And I thank you for seeing that. I would submit to everybody listening though. I think it's harder to be inauthentic. It requires more effort and energy. And I think the other side of that though, is that there's a big difference between authenticity and intimacy. Like I can tell you that my son's homesick, right? Totally authentic.
Yeah.
I could choose to tell you that I didn't sleep last night because we were awake 16 times and he's doing this and this and this. But then I'm like kind of a little too far in the weeds. And I'm like, oh, now this is just like my therapy couch. And I'm like, oh, that's not here serving either of us, right? Yeah. Or, I'm very open about my personal life and what I'm navigating with the divorce and becoming a single dad, right? But it stops at the chapter. It doesn't go into the words in the story unless it's going to add context or serve somebody listening.
Value in some
right?
sense, yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what the world craves. Like I was on, your other show with Matt today, and we were talking about trust and I think he wrote a blog post on this that like 41% of consumers no longer trust corporations. And we think about this in the world and we think about a podcast, which is like, it's like a window into somebody's heart and their soul and their mind and their body, if you're willing to let it. But it's also this place where you can tell from a mile away if that person thinks that way or feels that way or operates that way. And we have the ability to like invite people into our living room and not only invite them in, but like, hey, have a seat. This is who I am. This is what it's like to be here with me. And I think that that's probably one of the most important parts, because I'm friends with so many podcasters that have massive shows. Like 2 of my friends alone, each of them get 30, 40 million downloads a year.
Wow.
And the one thing is I think we all share in common is each one of us has been like, quote unquote, canceled at least 3 times for being authentic. And I'm like, oh, look at that. There's starting to be a commonality here. Like there's this level of like trend, authenticity of like, I also have no problem admitting publicly when I'm like, hey, I can't believe I used to say that. Or like, if you go back on my podcast, there was an explicit tag on the first 450 episodes. There is no longer an explicit tag because I don't swear anymore. And God removed swearing from my life. And I'm like, I'm not going to go erase them. I'm not going to get rid of 500 episodes. I'm not going to pay the team to go edit them. And I'm allowed to make improvements. And there were people who are like, I can't listen to your show because you swear. And now I'm like, hey, by the way, new episodes, you can listen to them. And I'll like reach out to them when I remember. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you thought I'd never do it. It's gone. Right. So I think that there's a part there that I think is so important for people.
How did you realize that podcasting could actually really benefit your business?
Yeah. I realized it differently than most people, I think, who have a podcast. I only started my podcast right when COVID started. But before that, I built my entire career by just being a guest on everybody else's podcast. Okay. And so like we used to keep a running list of every podcast I've been on. And I think 6-7 years ago, we stopped keeping track and it was over 3,000 already.
Wow.
So I think I'm close to being a guest on like 10,000 podcasts from 2008, 2009 until now, which is crazy. That's like 16 years and I feel so old. And I'm not old. That's the craziest part. I'm not even old. But my whole business and career has always been built in every bucket of entrepreneurship. Like I started as a food blogger. Then I became just a keynote speaker, consultant. And then I became a consulting strategist. And then I became a coach, right? And like, that's all I do now is like a coach and consult and help people scale. But in every single business or phase of business, the number one lever that I would use was other people's podcasts. It was earned media. And there's nothing like having 20 minutes to 3 hours. Some podcasts I've done are 5 where you're in somebody else's living room who has relationships with everybody in their audience. And by having you, they're giving you a pass of like, you can trust him, you can listen to him, you can learn from him instead of having to necessarily build your own home. And so that's how I found out the power of podcasting. Like the first time I ever told the world about my eating disorders after I posted on the internet, went on a podcast. The first time I'd ever celebrated a business victory, I was like, I went on a podcast. Like when I wanted to sell my book and became a New York Times bestseller, I did a podcast tour very intentionally. And so I think I always knew the power of them. But then when it came to my show, I was petrified that even as a guy, and this is the weirdest part, the cognitive dissonance, who speaks for a living, who got paid to speak and consult, was like, nobody's going to listen because I don't have anything good to say. I'm going to run out of things to say. Yeah, well, everybody's laughing that's listening to this right now. They're like, yeah, I'm sure you run out of things to say. And I was just super, super nervous. And I'd owned a podcast microphone for 8 years before I launched a show. Never hooked it up, ever.
No way.
Yep, 8 years. And it was, what it really took is like right around when COVID happened, I was at the height of my career. I was making almost 7 figures a month in clear cash flow, and it all got taken away in probably 3 months. And so I had the bright idea. Of like, I'm going to go hike every day in the mountains till I find clarity. And it was like day 20 or something. I'm just sitting on this rock on the top of a mountain. And it was God just came to me and he's like, why have you had a podcast mic in your closet for 8 years? It was like the only question that hit me. And I was like, uh-oh, it's time. And then that's when the podcast was born. And then when I launched it, I basically just recorded like crazy and started publishing it. And every time I'd publish a show, I'd send it to anybody I knew. I would be in my text messages on my phone all day. I'm like, hey, it's crazy. I launched a show. I'd love for you to listen, to give me feedback. Tell me how it can be better. Like, what can I improve on? Do you know anybody that can benefit from it? Do you have anybody who'd want to come on the show? And I was hawking it. Like I was like a street vendor in New York City. And I was like, I gotta go. And, truthfully, as a podcast host, I'm the guy who teaches people how to leverage authentic relationships to grow and scale their business. And it is probably the number one relationship tool that I've ever had access to in my life. I've been able to become friends with people who used to be my heroes because I wanted to interview them on my show. I've ended up being flown all over the world. I've ended up with clients who were people who became friends who I thought would have never even spoken to me.
Wow, that's incredible.
And on the same side, I've gotten to learn so much. Like now I selfishly like ask questions for my own desire. I'm like, I want to know, like, how did you figure this out? Like, how do you do that? Like, and it's like having access to like PhDs in their field.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
right.
tell me more.
Right.
Like, tell me more.
Yeah.
And they're like, here's my phone number. Just text me if you ever need anything. I use those. And I'm like, hey, remember you said, like, I have a question. I need you to review my blood work. Like, where did this come from? Like, how do you do that funnel?
Yeah.
And it just became, and I think in this level, it's this incredible tool for me to build relationships with the people I'm learning and meet people that I never would have met. Like I met a woman and I just interviewed on my show who basically was an immigrant and then from a war-torn country, and they've been threatening to kill her for staying in the United States for like 20 years. And she's been fleeing, but teaching people how to step into their dreams and visions. And I'm like bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, oh my God, like what a gift, like what a blessing to be able to connect with people all over the world with all these different stories. And I think that's the part that's missed about podcasts is like, they are genuinely the number one relationship tool that I could ever have. And then I get to build a relationship with even you, but then the people listening get to build a relationship with that guest and me. And then when we connect or we're talking in DMs, like we have shared things to talk about and find commonalities, and then we become friends. Or it's really like this one degree of separation, giving, but it's just paying it forward on so many lenses, and the lens of relationships. And I think it's so powerful.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I want to come back to that. I'm interested to know, how did you get from God showing up and to getting your first few podcast episodes out there? Like, I think that's when it's been hiding for 8 years, that's a long time. How do you just get up and go? What happened?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm so glad that you asked this. Like here, I'm the guy who like knows tech and knows internet and had been doing live videos and all of it. So I just made a rule, and my rule was simple: no edits, no reshoots, no nothing. Nice. Whatever I record gets posted. I do not get to hit stop. And I got back that day. I found the mic. I set up a camera. I set up the mic. And luckily, Riverside had just launched, the platform you and I are recording in right now. And I knew I could record in Zoom, but I was like, I like Riverside. I literally signed up, and then I made a rule that I had to record 20 episodes before I could post it. And it's because I was posting 3 a week. So that gave me basically like 6 weeks. And I didn't have a website. I didn't have social media. I'd been off the internet for years, minus a Facebook group. And I was like, no one's even going to find this thing. And so I just said, screw it, let's go. And I recorded, and I literally was just like, no redos, no edits, no nothing. Whatever it is whatever it is. And it's like no different than if I cook a recipe for the first time. If you're at my house for dinner and I'm trying a new recipe, there's a chance you could taste it and not like it, but the only way I can make it better is if you tell me. And so I just kind of fell in love with that process. And I was like, this can't be perfect. It's never going to be. It's not going to be like my friends' shows who have editors and teams. And I was like, just record it and post it.
Love it.
And that's genuinely how I did it. And you know, to tie that to the story I shared earlier, that podcast saved my business because I went from making like multiple 6 figures a month, but I had a mastermind who got shut down because they were all Amazon businesses. My Amazon supplement company went out of business. Every consulting deal I had dried up because they all pulled contracts because COVID had just happened. So nobody knew. They were trying to retain staff. So like we're out multiple 7 figures. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And so all I did on that podcast was I was like, if I can help you in any way, just shoot me an email here. Shoot me an email here. Amazing. And over the first 30 episodes, I ended up just saying the same thing. And then I got a lot of emails and everybody was struggling with the same thing. And I was like, cool, I'm going to do a Zoom call with all of us. And we had 200 people show up on that Zoom call. And I basically coached for like 8 hours and I wrote down everything they said and I turned it into an outline on the call. And I was like, guys, I can teach you how to fix all of this. Like, this is easy for me. And I was like, who would want that? And everyone's like, yeah. And I was like, and I did the math and I did this on the call. And I was like, this would take about 42 videos for me to hit every one of these things. And I was like, would you guys pay for this? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, somebody give me a number that's fair. And someone's like $750. And I'm like, done. I was like, if 10 of you say yes, I'll record this tomorrow. And of the 200 people on the call, 198 of them said yes.
No way. That's amazing.
And so the next day I recorded, edited 42 videos. Shortest was like 12 minutes. The longest was like 45 minutes. Built a website, uploaded them all to the website, built a course platform, and in a span of 20 hours went from nothing to build. And then I sent it out to everybody. And then they all started going through it and we would run a call and have feedback and then started selling people, which then some of those people turned into my next mastermind members and some of my clients. And that's when I became a coach. And yeah.
It's an incredible story, all from being obedient and taking out that podcast mic. I love it.
And here's the craziest part. It's like not like those episodes. Like I do know some of the numbers. Like I don't think I had an episode break 100 downloads for the first 2 years. But I also will remind everybody listening that 50 of the right people is worth more than 50,000 of the wrong people. Because if you do the math on what I just said, 22 to 25 podcast episodes to get people on a Zoom call, 200 times $750, and nothing had more than 35 downloads. So it's really, that was a very, very, it was almost, I mean, it was basically 300 something grand, close to that, just from that. And like at the level that I was at, no, it was a stopgap. And then I got to build again and do that. But I think a lot of people fall into this trap of like, they want to hit a home run before they ever hit a base hit. Right. And they want to run the marathon, but like, you cannot jump to the finish line.
Yeah.
You have to genuinely go through the mile markers. And like, at some point, every podcast that you admire, they started with one episode. Yeah. They started with just a couple downloads. And yeah, some of them that were media backed or had other followings and platforms, of course, they flooded it over. But like, there's always the first.
There's always a starting point.
Always. And, you know, I've wanted as an entrepreneur my whole career to be like, can I just have the finish line, please? Yeah. And then I forget that like God doesn't give me things that I don't have the character and scars to maintain yet. I
like that.
And so I'm like, oh, that's why it took so long, or why now I'm getting guests like that, or every guest that shows up. Like I used to have to go out and pitch people. We turned down 25 a week.
No way.
It's our inbox is just like, boom, can we come on the show? Can we come? And I was like, I'm not going to do 365 podcasts. Like I'm not Joe Rogan. Right. Like I want to talk to everybody so bad, but I'm like, I can't. Right. So there's things that like just come with time and putting that in consistently.
That's an incredible story, George. I love that. I really do. I want to go back to what you were saying before about podcasting being such a powerful tool. And I think you're absolutely right. It is. It's a game changer when it's done right. And you talked about earlier on about the consistency aspect, the authenticity, and being curious and wanting to grow. I think all of that added together, it is absolutely a game changer. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes you see other podcasters making?
That's a great question. The short answer is the biggest one is treating it like a transaction, right? Like on both sides. Like if somebody's taking the time to come on your show, treat them like they were walking into your home, right? And if you're taking the time to go on somebody's show, treat it like you're visiting their home. Like bring a gift. Like bring a thank you, like bring that level of energy. And for those that have people who listen, which we all do, understand that every single one of those people listening is the start of something great, and their attention matters because they don't have to give it to you. So I'd say the biggest mistake that I see people make is they lose perspective. And by losing perspective, the second mistake is they play the short game over the long game. They'll become reactive and use the podcast as like a place to push, or like, I want more ads in it, or I want more X in it. And I was like, how do we feel when we get an ad on our phone on YouTube, or we pay for premium to not get it, or we complain at the movie theater, or like when we're in the middle of our favorite show on Prime Video and then an ad pops up? We do something else, right? Like there's the short game and there's the long game. And I think what ends up happening is that if you treat it like a transaction or you lose perspective, we become reactive and we think the podcast is really just a transactional tool, or like, if I get these numbers up, I can get more media buyers, I can get better sponsors, they'll pay me more for episodes. And I'm not against sponsorships whatsoever. But I think what everybody has to understand underneath all of it is that the success of your podcast is relegated to the success of the relationships of the people listening. And if that is not the number one priority, everything that follows has no chance of working. Nothing. And I've seen people take their shows that have had like the best shows ever, and then they sell out to ads, and everybody who listened 3 years, 5 years, gone. And the moment you lose them, you're not getting them back. Even if you say you're sorry, because they put their attention somewhere else.
Yeah. And there's so much out there to give attention to.
We are in a world that competing. And I think the mistake that everybody makes is they think they're competing for attention. You're not competing for attention. You're competing for trust, because trust is what keeps attention.
I like that.
And so the third thing is not understanding the game that people play and what game we're playing. I know from the bottom of my heart that the new people who find my podcast don't find it because they're searching Spotify and Apple for the titles of my show. They find it because somebody who listens shared it with somebody they know.
Yeah.
And at some degree that ripple went out.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with podcasters. Sometimes it can feel like an echo chamber. It is. And this is why I use Lighthouse as a branding. My favorite Lighthouse quote is the best podcast quote I could ever give you. A lighthouse gives light because giving light is its nature. It's not interested in who gets it. Meaning you consistently give it out and spread it out and know that there's a ripple happening. But just because somebody listens to, and I've had this, 500 episodes and then emails me. And I'm like, where have you been the other 499? They're like, I've just been listening. I had nothing to respond to. And I was like, I've asked in every podcast episode to send me a message so I don't feel alone. And they're like, yeah, but this one. And I'm like, oh, there's a whole lot of things that happen that we don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And people that are listening that we don't know. And so I think that like at a high level, those would be the mistakes that I see people making. And I know some of them might even be ethereal for people. But when you really, really think about it, and I'll give you a tangible one. They spend more time recording than they do distributing. The success of your show is not boiled down to you hitting publish. It's really boiling down to how many times after you hit publish, you unapologetically and aggressively sell that show to people who need it. The promotion of your show is worth its weight in gold compared to the publishing of your show. Like to the point where I have keyboard shortcuts on my phone. So I know that if you ask me a mindset question, I type @mindset on my phone and it pre-populates an episode I saved. So when I'm talking to somebody, they're like, and I'm like, I'll be standing with people at the coffee shop and they'll ask me a question about like book. I'm like, I did an episode on my favorite books on my podcast. Do you want to listen to it? And they're like, I'd love it. And then I like @books. And it sends in the link when I text it to them. Like, we need to be the realtors of our real estate that's actively for sale, where we're trying to get people to come occupy it. And I think so many people, like, I'll be honest, if you're American, you've seen the movie Field of Dreams. I joke about this, but Kevin Costner lied to you. If you build it, they don't come. If you build it with them, they'll come and they'll bring other people with them. And so I think about your podcast as it's a piece of real estate that you are the real estate agent of. And I love that it's built and I love that it's listed. But if nobody knows that home is for sale, nobody can come walk through it to make you an offer. And the offer that you're trying to get is their attention and trust to feel safe sitting in that home. So like invite them into your pool party, but they have to know you have a pool. They have to know you have a house. And I'd say that's the biggest one, because people think it's like, oh, I posted, it's up on Libsyn, it's up on X, it's up on blank, it's on Spotify. And I'm like, well, they're not interested in promoting your show for you. You have to be interested in promoting your show for you. And so it's not just social. It's not just my Instagram story. It's everywhere. I personally think if we could track this, which we probably could, but I'm not into it, I've gotten more podcast listeners through real life relationships than I have from the internet. I can tell you right now, personally, there's 50 Delta flight attendants who listen to my podcast. Do you want to know if the thing they didn't ask me was, do you have a podcast? No. I'd be like, hi, Sadaf, like, nice to meet you. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for the Coke Zero. Like, how's your day going? Like, amazing. I'm like, oh, how long you been a flight attendant? Oh, blank. I'm like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, oh, I love this and this and this. I'm like, oh, you study psychology? That's interesting. Me too, because I have this podcast. Like, you have a podcast? Yeah. Like, hey, you want to listen to this episode? Like, it's genuinely like in every single piece, which goes back to one of the first things I said, is that authenticity is the most important part, because if you can't unapologetically advertise your home, no one's going to find your home. And like, my podcast is something I'm proud of. Like, I get emotional when I say it, and not because it's perfect and not because I have all the answers or there's the best advice, but it's real and authentic. And it genuinely is an embodiment of what it would feel like to be at a kitchen table with me. And so when you have that, you realize that every single thing in your life is an opportunity to spread it. And my mission on the podcast is not to sell you. If you listen to it, I don't sell anything, nothing. There's no ads. I'm like, hey, if you want to come to an event, come. We'd love to have you, right? If I can help you, shoot me a DM. But it's to be of service.
Yeah.
And so then I look at every conversation in the world. Like, if I'm in a conversation with somebody, I'm like, God, I'm really struggling with mindset. And I'm like, God, I have an episode where I interviewed this really good mindset person. I was like, hey, I have an episode like on my show. Can I send it to you? And they're like, I would love that. I go find it. I send it. So I've also built my podcast to be like a prescription cabinet of things that help people. And the way that I see it is, if I have the cure for cancer, I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. So like, get out of my way. You could be a barista. I'll tell you right now, I live in Montana. My son's teachers listen to my podcast. The coffee baristas listen to my podcast. The service manager at Subaru listens to my podcast. I was at church the other night and 3 of them were like, we didn't even know you had a podcast. We're listening now. And I'm like, oh no, these are my church guys too. Now I'm like all embarrassed. I'm proud of it. And I think that that's the point, is like, everybody listening to a previous point, it's like, it's your house. You get to decorate it.
I think you're, to tie it back to something you said before. So the authenticity part, but there's also the part about having genuine connection with people. And I think that's what makes people actually want to go find it. Like, yeah, you have a podcast. Lots of people have a podcast, but why do they want to go find yours? It's because you've built that connection with them.
Yeah. And I think that that's the point. And even because I know there's going to be somebody listening. So, well, my whole show is strategies and tactics. Amazing. How you deliver them is your personality, right? Like, just don't make your podcast something and go read on Google. Like, add a story, add some humor, right? Like, you can add personality in the first 30 seconds. Like, I have plenty of people that have really good podcasts that are like, they are scripted. but there's also human in the beginning. And they're like, hey guys, like stoked today's show, like this happened, spilled my coffee, wife's mad at me, got a new truck, like flat top. I'm like, okay, I can't keep up with all this, but I'm glad that everybody loves you. And then it turns into like this robotic show, but their audience loves that, like boom, 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 or even like some of the history ones where they're just like reading fact after fact after fact, but then they'll add ad libs, right? There's always space in whatever podcast, in whatever industry for you. And that's the one thing that makes it unique, is like your authenticity is the unique DNA or the fingerprint that nobody else can have. Nobody else can have it.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because that is absolutely true. But how often do we, when we're starting out, do we look at all these other people, you know, these successful podcasters who are already doing it, and you want to mimic them because you think, oh, they're doing it so well. People love what they're doing. There must be something in it. And you lose yourself in that. And sometimes it can take time to come out of that and be authentic, have the courage to be authentic.
1,000%. And here's the thing I've said to people, I'm friends with most of those people. Here's the thing. You're looking at their after state. Go compare yourself to their before state and see what happens.
Yeah. Listen to those first episodes.
That's the part that people miss, is like, if you went and compared to their before state and you imitated, which is a form of flattery done, you'd be a lot further along and a lot faster.
Yeah.
But everybody wants the finish line. And to your point, what we tolerate, we end up embracing. So we try to become like somebody else, and we lose ourselves in that process.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this is how they do their intros. I'm like, great. You will never let me come into your home and tell you how to raise your children.
That's right. Yeah.
So don't let me tell you how to run your intro. Right? Like, what do you want to say? How do you want to say? Now, are there best practices? 1,000%. You also live in a world of AI where you can literally, and I did this the other day to prove a point to somebody. I was like, find me their top 5 podcast competitors in their space. And like, yeah, I'm like, cool. I need you to go analyze every single one of their intros and episodes and give me a breakdown of exactly what principles they hit and examples of how they hit them. And then they're like, that took like 1 minute. I'm like, yeah, do you see principle? Right? They let the audience know that the episode's for them because it fits this. They share what this is. They open this. And I was like, I'm not going to give you a script. Now, how would you say that if we were having a cup of coffee and you wanted me to listen to the show? And they're like, oh, I'll be like, dude, that question you asked me today, like you're struggling with this and struggling with this, like you have to listen to this episode because I talked about this. I answered this. I asked these 3 questions and you'll never believe it, because that thing I struggled with for an hour, she said I can fix in 5 minutes. So here's a link to go listen to the show.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, right. And like, even when I'm like recording my podcast, like there's a dirty little secret. I don't tell this very often. It's hard to record solo shows with no audience. It's hard. You give me a person in front of me, game over, right? You can tell, right?
Yeah.
There's been more times than not where I would literally email you and be like, hey, Sadaf, listen, I have to record a podcast today. Can you jump on Riverside with me and just listen? Don't respond. Don't speak. I'm going to mute you.
I just need a face.
But I need a face.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, yeah, I've done that more times than I've not done that. I don't need to do it anymore. But now what I imagine is like whoever prompted the podcast idea, I imagine they're sitting in front of me. And I imagine we're sitting at a coffee shop or sitting at my kitchen table. And I'm like, how would I talk to them if they were in my kitchen? Like, what would I say? What would I ask them? And like that really human element is a really, really powerful way to be able to do it.
That's a really good tip. I like it.
Yeah.
So actually, George, if someone wanted to improve their podcast today, what's one simple action you think that they can do?
I love this question. They are not going to like the answer. You are not going to like the answer. You ready?
Let's hear it. Yep.
Listen to your own show.
You're right. I don't like
episodes as a consumer, but here's the rule. With childlike curiosity, you cannot judge it. You cannot shame yourself. You cannot, and by the way, I've seen your kids running behind, so I can be really mean about this and be nice at the same time. If your kid comes home and their writing is bad and you're trying to teach them, you would never allow them to shame themselves into getting better and practicing. Podcasting, speaking, being able to articulate information, put things in frameworks, like it's a muscle. Like I've been speaking for 20 something years now, and I still feel like a kindergartner. And I'm also aware I'm really good at it. And I still feel like a kindergartner. And I only started watching my own talks back like 2 years ago. I couldn't do it. The moment I did, I instantaneously started getting better. So step number 1 is be curious, but you have to make a rule with yourself. You cannot judge yourself, fault yourself, blame yourself, or shame yourself. And so I want you to imagine, even if you don't have kids, that you're 6 years old and you're the parent and you're just watching them do their homework and you're like, oh, that's cute. I reward you for trying. And this has been really, really good. And I want you to consume it like you be somebody who listened, because truthfully, you're going to attract a lot of people that see the world the way that you do. And so like, can you make it all the way through? Is it memorable for you? And all you do is you take notes and you don't try to change all of them. You just pick one thing at a time. And you're like, hey, in the next episode, I'm going to actually make the intro better because like I realized it made no sense with what I talked about in the episode. I'm like, oh, amazing. And then, tweak. And then even for me over time, I realized that if I didn't have some canned questions for guests, they would stop talking when I thought they would keep going. And then I'd be like, and then I'd make up a question, but it was like down a different vein. And so then there was a season where I kept like right next to me on a piece of paper, like kind of like 911 questions of like, it doesn't matter what happens if I ask this. Yeah. And then I learned little tricks of like, can you expand on that? And now I'm good, right? I just put it back in their core. But that's a muscle that like comes with time, right? And so number 1 is you get to listen as well, because the second most valuable place to go is to your actual audience. But you won't be able to hear your audience's feedback if you don't give yourself feedback first. And so it's yourself, then your audience, and sometimes people you love. So like I'll record an episode and the first person I'll send it to is my partner. And it's like, hey, I just did this episode and like trusting your intuition in business. It came out of thin air. Like I feel like I pulled it out of my butt. I do not know if it's valuable. And I'm like, do you have 30 minutes to listen to this at 2x? And she's like, I got you. And then she'll write back and she's like, I can't believe you sent this to me. Of course, post this. And I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, I'm not saying it again. I'm like, okay. And then there's other times where she'd be like, yeah, no one's going to get mad at you, but I don't think anybody's going to listen to this either. And I'm like, noted. And now I've gotten to a point where like my barometer is pretty spot on. Like I know now, and this is really interesting. It's probably going to blow your mind. If I get to the end of a show when I'm recording it and I'm like, I can't post that, it is typically my best shows. If I get to an end of a show and I'm like, that is the best show I've ever done, worst show I've ever done, I cannot post it. I can't. And I'll take that show knowing it, I'll have somebody listen to it. And then they're like, eh. So then I'll plug it into ChatGPT and I'm like, can you give me all the main takeaways from this? And I will do it again. And I will do it again. And so the second answer to your question is, how can you improve? More swings at bat. And truthfully, if you're a podcast host, I'd say for every podcast you record, be a guest on at least 3 to 5 other podcasts.
And how do you do that?
You ask. I have been over, I think, 100 people's number 1 podcast, like their first podcast, where they're like, hey, I'm launching a podcast. I'm like, can I come on? They're like, no, you're like successful. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm still your friend. I was like, so what? And they're like, would you do that? Like I was on 3 last week. They're like, yeah, like anytime. You can even do it with friends and have them like mock interview you, but like it is a gym. Yeah. And I find like the more that you get into it, the better you find cadence. You can read energy. You'll realize like when a host wants you to fill more space, like we're like, George, go. Like I'm all in for this. I'll tilt you. And then when you see them like interrupting, so you'll start to learn like your cadence and You'll start to learn like length of shows where I'll be like, ask a host, like, how long is the show? And they're like, oh, we try to keep it under 20. So then I'm like, oh, got it. My answers, less than a minute each. And they're like, we don't have a time cap. And I'm like, oh, my schedule's clear for 3 hours. We're going deep. Right.
Yeah.
And you just get to practice it. Right. And it's no different. Like if you cook dinner in your kitchen for your family every night, you know where everything is in every drawer. The moment you go to a friend's house, could you still cook dinner? Same recipe, 1000%. But you're like, hey, what drawer is this in? Like, hey, where do I put
takes
this?
Longer.
But then the more that you do it, the better. And then eventually you realize, hey, if I go to any kitchen, as long as I bring this knife, this apron, this thermometer, I can cook in their kitchen. And it starts to get really, really, really easy. And so you practice and you create opportunities. And so tactically, if you have somebody on your show that has a podcast, I don't ever ask them to have me on theirs. I just let that naturally happen. But I'd be like, hey, do you know anybody who I'd make a good guest for their show? And I don't ask them themselves. Like even if you had a show, I'd be like, hey, do you know anybody like that I could be a good guest on? Like I would love to do it. I'll send them a message. I'll say, you sent me, but like, I really love spreading this message. And then anytime somebody interviews me, the first thing I say, hey, is there anything I can do for you? 1000%. And I was like, how aggressive can I be? And they're like, whatever you want. I'm like, great. I need at least 10 yeses to podcasts, And they're like, what? I'm like, do you know 10 podcasters? Like, yeah. I'm like, I want 10 yeses. So how can I support you? I'm like, what email? I'm like, here. And then they'll send 10 emails and be like, hey, you need to have George. You need to have George. You need to have George.
Amazing.
Because the worst thing that somebody can say to me is no.
Yeah.
And I think if you lead with value, you go all the way back to the beginning of this short show that I went over, like I always do, all the way back to like, don't be transactional.
Yeah.
Be transformational. When I go on somebody's show, I pour into their audience. I pour into them. I talk to them before the show of like, hey, can I help you with their business? Like, hey, this would be helpful. This would be boom. So when it gets to that point, they're like, I would love to make an intro for you. I would love to share. And over time, you basically get in. And if you want a little hack too, if you have a podcast, no matter what size, the amount of podcast agencies, placement agencies that are constantly looking for places to send their people is you just get listed. Like I have a friend Scout, when we became friends because she has a podcast agency, but we said yes to one of their guests after like they submitted like 20, I didn't know. And it was like the best guest ever. And I was like, oh my God. So I responded to the email and I was like, listen, if you can find me as many of these as possible, like you will forever have a yes in my calendar. I don't even review them. And then sure as crap, like I've probably had 30 people on the show from them. And she's like, who do you want? Who do you want? Who do you want? And then she's like, George, can I do anything? I'm like, actually, yeah, you talk to a lot of podcasters. Can you tell them I'd love to come on their show? And so when other podcasters are like, hey, we're having one of your people, do you know anybody else? She's like, oh, I have this friend, George, like he has a podcast. And like, you start to leverage relationships and then you just like expand, but you still have to start.
Yeah. And as you said too, have that, it's a muscle that needs to grow.
Yeah. And if I could make a book recommendation, and it's an entrepreneurial book, but I think it applies to podcasters more than anything. It's called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. And it's really a beautiful parable. It's like The Alchemist, if you've ever read The Alchemist, just a little bit shorter. And it's on the 5 laws that basically make you a go-giver, which is the law of reciprocity in the world and how to operate in business. That book is a required read for every single person I coach. But what podcasts really are is relationship banks. And that book is a manual on how to leverage podcasts, both with the relationship with yourself, with your guests, with you going on other ones, and also the relationship with your audience. Right? Like it's very much a bank. And so that book I think would be massively beneficial. And for everybody listening, I'll give you a little hack too. That's a 2-hour read. I think it's an hour and 51 minutes on Audible, if I remember, or something like that. You can also use ChatGPT to give you a summary and the big key ideas before you read it if you really, really want to. Or you can go on YouTube and there's probably like 15 to 30 like 10-minute summaries of the book, but get the big idea. And if you're using ChatGPT, also, I'm going to give you a prompt and say, since you know me so well, ChatGPT, I want you to tell me how I can use this to implement this into how I run my podcast, but be ruthless with me. Like I have no feelings and be honest with me. So if you're going to use ChatGPT, let it roast you too and have it call you out on your weak spots and on your blind spots and be like,
okay.
Well, yeah, but based on the questions you asked me, you really struggle with consistency, George. So let's be honest here. Like, you're not going to really use this muscle. So if you want to use this muscle, here's a plan that you can implement. It's really powerful if you use it the right way. And I found, Sadaf, to your point earlier of like, I don't want to listen to my own episode. I have no problem with a robot roasting me for some reason. I do not take it personally.
Yeah.
And so I use it a lot to improve my episodes. And to improve my speeches and to improve my ads and like copy that I'm writing. And I'm like, hey, I want you to imagine you're this entrepreneur and I just screwed you over and you're really, really mad at me. Would this post be enough to turn your no back into a yes and you have a connect? No, you feel transactional, like you're a snake. And I was like, how can I fix it?
Yeah.
And it's like just really constantly massaging these muscles everywhere that we can. And I think AI is probably one of the most slept on weapons for even therapy.
I love that. You know, listening to you, it's what you've just said now goes back to what you said at the beginning about being curious and being, you know, wanting to grow. And it's just so clear.
Yeah.
It comes through. It really does.
I always joke with people that humility is the honey for God. Humility creates the space for something new to enter, but it starts with us being curious. Like, I think curiosity is the same vein as humility. Like, I know what I know, but I know there's a whole lot of stuff I don't know.
That I don't know. Yeah. George, I think I could keep going forever, but I know I'm really conscious of the time. This has been gold. It really has. If our listeners want to listen and to learn more from you, what's the best place they can find you and connect with you?
It's a great question. If you want to see the pinkest website and the pinkest podcast decals ever, it's mindofgeorge.com, which we only named the podcast that name because I was like, how can I encompass me changing my ideas all the time and never have to change the title of the show? And they're like, Mind of George. And I was like, oh, we can just call it the label of my mind and I can talk about anything I want. So that's actually why the podcast is called The Mind of George Show.
I love it.
And so if you're listening, I joked with Matt earlier too, since everybody here knows Matt, I'm sure. I was like, you either think I belong in a straitjacket or I don't. And either way, you're right, I'm sure. And so my website, mindofgeorge.com, it has the podcast, like 600 episodes. I focus on mindset. I'm sure you can tell, relationships. I'm sure you can tell, and building and scaling your business with customer journey and marketing. And those are the things I share freely. And it's all free on my podcast. And then the one place I say is if you have a question, if I can answer any questions, if I can help you in any way, my Instagram is the best place to get a hold of me. Just slide me a DM, ask me your question, let me know how I can support, and I will do the best I can to support you.
Awesome. And for those tuning in, you'll find all the links and details in the description. And I can also attest that everything you said there about your podcast, it really does hit all of those and truly delivers.
Yeah. George, yeah. Thank you for having me, Sadaf. Like, it's always a pleasure. I love talking to you. So
this was real fun. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
And to those listening, if today's conversation sparked something for you, let's talk. Podcasting can be a game changer, as you've heard, for your business, and I'd love to help you make it work for you. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.